Hello guys, once again it's Matt, and today we have another video. Let's thank our members first, Overlanding 11B, Cots, and Crazy Boo. Thank you for being the full crew members. Thank you all the Foxbat and Fishbat members, and let's get into it. So today we're going to kind of have a basic guide on raiders. Already have some videos on that, but I wanted to make a kind of a very basic one. And probably tomorrow we'll be releasing the keybinds that I use and how to use them to just in effect, you know. So today we're going to talk a little bit on the basics of the Raider, and tomorrow the keybinds and how to implement it in the game, okay? We are going to use Paint over here. Don't judge me because I have no other I have other stuff to use, but this is the more simple one. Okay? So let's talk about what the radar is. So radars are basically, let's just draw an aircraft here over here. Jesus, that looks really bad, but and all aircraft past beyond 1960 basically have radars, right? They're normally on the nose of the aircraft, as you see, for example, on the F-14 over here. Normally they are a dish, as you see here, and in this photo that I'm showing to you guys right now as well. Many aircraft have different types of dishes, as you see here. This is a more well-known type of dish, you know. But basically, it is a way to, let's just draw a radar here. This is amplified, right? So it's going to have here. So basically, this is what a radar would look like if you would be simplified enough, you know. Normally, you have two parts of the radar. The part that it receives the signal, okay, together with this, right? In this. And on the point here, it will have an emissor or something that emits radio waves. So what a radar is basically an antenna that can basically transmit radiation, which is radio waves, right, to a certain path. And then when something is over here, for example, over here, it will bounce back on the thing, obviously, you know, it will bounce back here, and it will bounce back right here and go into the receiver, okay? So basically, this is what the radar is, okay? It has a receiver, an antenna that it has a receiver on the middle here, and an emitter of radio waves. Remember, it's radiation. So it's radio waves, okay? But it is radiation. It's not ionizing radiation. It's not the radiation that you normally know from nuclear power plants or stuff like that. But it is a radio wave, so it is a radiation, okay? Basically, this is what our radar is, okay? So it will emit, bounce back from an object, and return. So it will go right here, and then it will bounce back, and the radar will capture this thing. It can measure the distance between these little things over here. For example, it's 1 kilometer, for example, or something. You know, it's basically it can be used for many things, but this is basically what a radar is. Okay, all aircraft have that, and they have different types of systems to be used with that. Okay, so normally one of the systems that you use with a radar, obviously because we are talking about military aircraft, are missiles. Okay, so let's try to. Jesus, that's not a good missile. That's supposed to be a sparrow, but yeah. We have the Fox 1 missiles, and we have. Let me draw this again. This is just. Oh my god, this is just bad. So we have the missile here, the fins, as you see, right? And we have two missiles, the Fox 1 and the Fox 3. Fox 1 are the semi-active missiles, and Fox 3 are the active missiles, okay? Which means that they have a part of the antenna of the radar or the whole antenna. So the Fox 1s, the semi-active missiles, so we have the Sparrows, for example, the R-24Rs and stuff like that, they are basically the same as these, but they don't have the emitter, okay? They just don't have it. They have right on the nose of the missile, they will have basically a receiver, okay? And they will use the illuminating effect of the radiation that it's going from the mother aircraft, bounce back to the object that they are being told to target, and go for here, and then the missile will know that the target is there and needs to turn. It will tell this, that the target is there, to the computer, and the computer of the missile will tell the fins to turn to a certain direction to meet a specific envelope to intercept the target. Okay? So these are the Fox 1 missiles. They use the radiation from the mothership to actually guide themselves. Remember, this radiation is not a beam like this, okay? Normally the radiation when you are scanning is all over the place, and then it's pinging many targets, you know. But when the target is locked, it will be a focused beam on that target. It doesn't mean that it is not a line. It's not a line, it's actual beam. So if a target comes up right here, for example, this will bounce back more radiation than this because it's closer. Okay, this is very important to know. So that's why sometimes the missiles in War Thunder, even if you get a lock on a certain aircraft, they're going for other stuff, you know. You can have multiple things here that makes the radiation bounce back, and with this bouncing back, they can bounce back to the missile, and the missile will go for this target and not the target that you actually wanted. Okay, so this is a very important thing to know. It's not like a line; it's a beam of spread out radiation. Okay, it's a place on the sky that it's being illuminated by radiation. It's smaller than the normal search pattern, but it is still very large, and that can influence on where the missile is going. Okay, so this is the idea behind a Fox 1 missile. Okay, it will use the radiation bouncing back from this to know where the missile is. It has to go, you know. But a missile like the a Fox 3 missile, on the head of the missile, it has not only a receiver, you know, but it also has a small emitter, you know, something that emits radiation as well, which means that it is kind of a smaller version of the proper radar. Normally this has less power, obviously, and normally less range than the normal mothership radar. That's why normally you need the mothership to at least kind of gives a general direction, because the range on a radar like this will be so much smaller. So this bouncing back radiation will give the mothership a position where the target is, and then it will tell the missile where to kinda go via data link. This is how the Phoenix missile starts to track, or the R-77, the AIM-120, missiles like that used to do like that. But once they are closer to the target, we have the missile here again, it will be in range. And then it's basically the same. So once it is the target, the same target, for example, it's here, it is in closer range, this missile will start emitting radiation as well, and it will lock and receive the radiation from the target as well, and the missile will know where to hit. Okay, once it's close enough, it will use normally laser proximity fuses. So on the side of the missile there, you will see, you will not see actually, but it has laser emitters, and if it's like less than 10 meters, it explodes the payload, you know. So that's how a missile basically works. If you have any doubts on that, let me know in the comments. But basically, this is it. That's why missiles like the Phoenix, for example, they don't need a proper lock on the target. They can actually just have a TWS soft lock, you know. So the radar is just kind of looking at the target and continue to search. So it looked, got an information, and continued to search on the other targets, on the other things, you know. So it's a mix between that. Okay. So it's just looking, bounce back, know where the target is, and continue to search. Use that information, pass the missile, Once it is in a certain distance, it tells even the missile to turn on its proper radar, and then it will detect its target and go pitbull. We call it going pitbull. Okay? So this is how a Fox 3 missile works. This is how a Fox 1 missile works. Okay? Hopefully that was clear enough, because this is kind of a very complex topic that I wanted to show to you guys, right? As I said, in the game, I'm going to put it here, we have search patterns, okay? So the radar will search a certain pattern or a certain area. For example, we can tilt the antenna downwards or upwards or anything like that. We're going to talk more about that on the tomorrow's video. But yeah, basically you can have multiple types of, ways to tilt the radar to emit a certain radiation to one place. For example, here's the ground. For example, there's a target here. You're flying high. You can emit the radiation here. It will bounce back and go to the target as well. Okay, so you have scan zones. You have multiple ways to deal with stuff. Okay, so here we have the normal situation in War Thunder. Okay, you will be, as I said, illuminating one target when you have a lock. So you will select the target that you want. The radar will continue to emit right on the target. This is very important to know, okay? Instead of searching for other places and looking down and stuff like that. Normally, what happens is that the radar will just have to keep updating the way that it emits. So the emitter is emitting like types of various directions that it is just emitting. And once these radiations start coming back, you will start receiving the information, right? And this takes time, okay? As you see, I'm drawing a line here. This is kind of represents how it is in game, how it is in real life. But you have to remember, obviously, it is in light speed, because the radiation is traveling at light speed, okay? But the principle is the same. It is still a speed, it's not something instantaneous. So it takes time until you actually search the whole place, okay? PESA and AESA radars solve that we're going to talk at the end of the video. Kind of solve that, but still, this is the way. That's why it takes time to basically see all the directions, because it takes time to the emitter emits a radiation over here. See, it's taking time. It's basically the same idea, but it is at light speed, so it's very fast, but still it takes time, and then turns back. Okay? This is the principle of why the search radars, the search modes in the radars, they take a while to just search the area that you want to search. Once you are actually illuminating one target or you are locking it, the emission is in a focused place. So the emission will be faster to go upwards and downwards on the stream of the radar, So because you are only illuminating one target, so you go, 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 go very quickly in just one direction. So it makes it very, very easy, and the updates on the radar will be much, much, much faster. On a TWS, for example, which are modes that they track while they scan, so they will do the same. They will keep scanning, so they take a little bit of time, but then they calculate the time here very quickly, return back, and then continue to emit. Oh, it turns back, so yeah, let's start again. Emit, 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 bounce back, knows that the target is here, continue to search. This is how the TWS basically works, okay? So we will continue to search, but once at a time, when it gets to the part of the air that the target is, it will calculate the distance to the target. That's the main important thing, calculating the distance to the target, okay? Okay, basically this is how TWS work and how normal scans mode work and how the tracking mode work, okay? Now we have some problems that radars need to face. One of them is ground clutter. So this is the ground. For example, we have mountains, we can have buildings, we have trees, anything. Once the radar is actually just looking directly ahead, this happens in any radar, even the pulse Doppler radars that we are going to talk about how they do that, but still happens on every radar, okay? Basically, when it emits down here, for example, it bounces back here and it says that it has something over here. Then it emits here and it bounces back, so it says something is here. And then it goes back here and it backs down and it says something here. And something here. And then the target and something here. Here, nothing. So what this is a kind of a line that the radar is seeing that you are not properly seeing, you know, because everything here is just bouncing back radiation. The design here is the drawing here is supposed to be confusing as well, because it is. The radar is getting confused on how much radiation is coming back from the ground, okay? This is a problem in every single radar that you see in real life. Even the pulse Doppler radars, even the PESA, every radar that you see will have problems with ground clutter, okay? There are ways to deal with ground clutter. One of them is the pulse Doppler or even the MTI. They kind of use the same method, but in a different way. I'm not gonna get too much into it. For gameplay purposes, it is basically the same. But mainly, you know, pulse Doppler will not see too much of the distance, you know, you will see just the speed more, you know, and the MTI it's kind of the other way around. But we're not going to get too much into it. These radar modes, they basically have a way to filter the ground clutter. How is that? They basically use the Doppler shift effect, you know, you hear, remember when you were a kid and you see an ambulance coming up, and once it passes you, the sounds change, you know, the sounds of the siren change. That's the Doppler effect. It means that if you are moving towards the target or the target's moving towards you or something like that, the distance going and returning will be different, okay? And with that, the frequency changes. Basically, it means that, for example, here, basically it's going for, I don't know, 10 kilometers over here. Let's say one number. But then when it returns, your aircraft is over here. So with that, you can have, with its speed, you can know what are the static things on the ground. I know it's confusing, but hear me out. So for example, when the radiation returns, it will basically change its frequency because the aircraft is moving towards the you know, the radio beam, and because of that, it's the same principle. The sound changed in the ambulance. Here, the frequency of the radio wave is changed as well. It had to travel less, and basically it changed. With that, the radar knows what the aircraft speed is, and basically it knows what the Doppler effect will be for everything that is coming from the ground, everything that is static, okay? So it basically kind of knows everything that it will be static because of the Doppler effect, because of this change in frequency, and with that, it can basically filter out anything that is on the ground, for example, or anything that is static. An aircraft that you are flying against, for example here, let me just erase this. Now we're not talking about a fixed target, we are talking about an aircraft. For example, if an aircraft is coming towards you, this Doppler effect on the bouncing radiation that is coming from the aircraft will be different from the setting that the radar is using to filter out the ground clutter that is static, because the aircraft is moving, okay? It's moving towards you. So the speed is different, the Doppler effect is different from the static ground. With that, it knows that this is a target and this is nothing, and it has to just ignore it, you know? Hope it was clear enough, because it is a very complex thing. What is the problem with this? If an aircraft is flying perpendicular to you, this is why notching is such a good tool against a pulse Doppler radar. The same Doppler effect bouncing back radiation will happen on the aircraft and on the ground, which means that it's the same Doppler effect, because your aircraft is at the same speed and here is technically static to the radar, because The only speed that it has is yours, okay? And with that, it's basically the same as looking at the ground. With that, it kind of doesn't see the target because it will filter out the target. Even though it is seeing the target, it will filter out because it thinks that it is a ground clutter. You know? This is why chaff doesn't work too much on pulse Doppler effects as well. So chaff, it's normally deployed on the tail of the aircraft and stays static. So the aircraft is moving, but the chaff itself, it's kind of static. And the radar is actually just measuring the same Doppler effect as the ground, so it is ignoring the chaff. That's why pulse Doppler radars and MTI radars ignore chaff, because it's technically static, you know, while the aircraft itself is moving towards you, okay? This is the principle of the pulse Doppler radar. It is very good at hot targets or even cold targets, but not at targets that are flying perpendicular to you. That's why cranking and notching is such a good tool against this, okay? So basically this is it, okay? Just remember, uh, having the pulse Doppler and the MTI doesn't mean that these things they are after the receiving end received the radiation, okay? This is after that, which means that the ground clutter is still here, man. Everything is still here. The chaff clutter, everything, the aircraft clutter, everything is here. But the aircraft is choosing to ignore the ground clutter. It's choosing to ignore the chaff because it is using these methods to actually ignore it. But it doesn't mean that the radiation is not there, okay? This is very important. Why? Because here we have a perfect example on why this is important. For example, the aircraft is notching you in a very good manner, and or it's cold, and it drops chaff. This can be seen on the on the on War Thunder, for example. The aircraft is going away from you, for example. You launch a missile, but the missile goes for the chaff, even though your radar is not seeing the chaff. Why is that? It's because always remember you have two antennas to look and to care about. You have your own radar antenna that its only purpose is to emit a proper radiation beam on the target that you are firing. But the actual receiving end that is very important, it's the missile end, receiving end. Okay? Some of these missiles have the capability to filter out chaff, some of them don't, and some of them are kind of in the middle in between. But generally speaking, a missile will have so much radiation. Imagine that the missile is right here. It's close to the chaff. The radio beam is here, but the chaff is here. It has so much radiation coming from this. It has so much that because the target is closer and normally it's bigger. Remember, a smaller target will bounce a certain amount of radiation, but a bigger target will bounce much more radiation, okay? So the bigger the target, the easier it is for the missile to go for that instead of you. And the closer the target, technically it will be bigger for the radiation, you know, because it's closer. It will do the same aspect of things, okay? So it's so much radiation that is coming back from the chaff here that the missile will just lose its mind and it will go for the chaff and miss, okay? So why is I'm talking about this? I did a video on this, but the main thing is that chaff, especially against pulse Doppler and MTI radars, but also for most missiles, because it's not only the radar of the aircraft that actually needs to just filter the ground, the clutter and stuff, but also the missile itself needs to do that the same. Okay, it needs to do that because it's two different antennas. So the missile has to process that thing as well. Okay, and that's why missiles are very bad at cold targets, you know, very bad at cold targets because one chaff and the missile will go kaput, you know. So you always have to worry about this. You have to worry about your radar having the proper emission on the target and the missile actually having a proper, you know, emission receiving from the target as well, which means that you normally don't see that because you are not on the missile. You don't have a screen for the radar on the missile, on the receiving end of the missile. You only have for your radar. So yeah, that can be problematic. And other thing that happens sometimes, in War Thunder, for example, you are not using PD or MTI, for example. You are using the chaff and the normal search modes. And the guy deployed chaff over here, but the aircraft is already over here. What happens normally is that he will lose lock from the aircraft when he fired the chaff, but the chaff will be illuminated. But since he's close to the target, normally the radiation will be enough that the aircraft will be a larger target than the chaff. But this only works when the target is closer than the chaff. So for example, if fire the chaff for some reason, it has to be hot, right? So if fire the chaff right there, this is the chaff, and the aircraft is coming towards you. You are illuminating the chaff, but see how close it is to the radiation. It is so close that we will receive a lot of bouncing back radiation. You will receive so much more, the same way that the missile went for the chaff because the chaff was closer. This will make the receiver of the missile will go to the aircraft instead of the chaff, because the aircraft itself is closer. The aircraft itself is closer than the chaff. So the bouncing back radiation is so much higher than the chaff that the missile will go for the aircraft. That's why when you are in a hot condition, when the target is coming towards you on your 12 o'clock, and you lose the lock because he fired a chaff and you are not using this mode, so the lock will go for the chaff, maintain the lock on the chaff, and the missile will have the same frequency if the target is still hot to you and in the general same direction at the chaff, because you are locking on the chaff, right? So if you maintain in the same kind of direction, the missile will go for the aircraft because the target of the aircraft is much larger than the smaller chaff that it's back there far away. Okay? And yeah, I wanted to make a small video, but oof, so many stuff to talk about. So let's wrap it up talking a little bit about PESA and AESA radars, okay? This is the latest technology, in these type of conditions. The US implemented in the early 2000s, Japanese implemented in the middle of the 90s, and the Russians implemented on the MiG-31 in 1979. It's basically, you would just remove the idea of having a larger radar, and you would have basically many, it's a lot smaller little antennas. This is what a PESA looks like, or AESA radar. It's basically the same. The main difference between the AESA and the PESA are basically the transmitter. The transmitter of the PESA will be a larger one that has a lot more megawatts to deal with longer ranges. That's why the MiG-31, for example, uses that. And the AESA will have many tiny ones for each one. So normally they are more precise, but they are weaker, okay, in the megawatts. So they will have less range. That's basically the main difference, okay? But they will have many small little radars that emits in a certain. So yeah, let me just start again. So PESA and AESA radars will have many small little radar antennas. It's like this. It's not exactly like this, but the idea is the same, okay? So it has, instead of a big one, it has many small ones. And once a target is here, each of these groups of these things, because they are very small, they will have a kind of a part of the airspace that they are to just search. So these, for example, will go here and bounce back. This will go here and bounce back. This is happening at the same time, guys. All of these go and back of all of these at the same time. That makes it what? It makes it much faster to detect any targets. It will basically detect any target simultaneously at the same time instantaneously. The only speed normally will be the light speed of going to the target and going back. He doesn't have to one antenna that will go to the left and right and up and down and try to look at every single direction alone. Each of these tiny little antennas will have a section of the airspace that they have to scan, and with that they can be very quickly detecting any targets on these, on these, on these, on this. Okay? This is basically what a PESA and an AESA. Remember, the PESA has a big transmitter, which has a lot more megawatts to do a lot more range. That's why the MiG-31 can do 300 more kilometers. And the AESA radars will have tiny transmitters for each of these little antennas, which make it very precise on the target direction, but the range will be less capable than the PESA normally. This is very classified as well, the proper dynamics of these radars. These radars are used in the F-22, the MiG-31, as I said, the F-2 from Japan. They were the first ones they used. I mean, the first one that they used was the MiG-31, not PESA. The first AESA radar was the F-2. Then the Americans first was the F-22. And basically every aircraft today use this type of radars, Su-35, the later models of the F-15E, yeah, Su-57, F-35, any aircraft like that use these type of radars instead of the big ones that take a lot of time to go to each direction and back. And while these tiny ones will go simultaneously all at the same time, and go back to the same time as well. So basically that's why PESA and AESA radars will be OP in game. It will be very much OP. But that's basically it. I know, very long video, and I hope you enjoyed. It is very difficult to understand some of these stuff. I hope I was clear enough. Remember the main things, about the ground clutter, about the chaff specifically, and always remember, you have an antenna on the nose of the aircraft and you have another antenna on the missile. The Fox 3 missile and the Fox 1 missile, the main difference between them is that the Fox 1 doesn't have an emitter, and the Fox 1 doesn't have it, and the Fox 3 has it, a tiny little emitter, just like a larger one in the aircraft. This is the main difference, okay? Obviously, we'll have less range and stuff like that, but basically, this is how a radar works, okay, guys? I was trying to simplify very, very much, so if you haven't understand something, leave it in the comments. I will try to understand your questions and answer. It is very much a topic that I could be on to talk about it for hours, because it is very, very complex, and I'm no aeronautical engineer or radar engineer. So this is my understanding of it, the way that my head works and understands it. So let me know in the comments if you haven't understand anything. And tomorrow we will see a video talking about more on radars, but especially how to use them on War Thunder, okay? So basically the keybinds and the basic knowledge that you need to have just to properly use radars in normal directions. You don't need to know how they understand to properly make it work, but it helps a lot. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what you think, and bye guys. See ya. Subscribe.